The Buccaneers can't finish the Bills in a shootout, leading to their third loss in the last 4 games. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I want to thank you for making them your first listen or view every single day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, I'd like to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Biggest takeaways and another unit failure by this Bucs team in a loss that's coming up in a little bit, as well as a little airing of grievances. But I have to start with the biggest moment in this one, and it's going to be really kind of the lone true failure of the offense on the day, outside of Baker's interception in the third quarter. And it was their 3 and out in the fourth quarter. So Baker's interception led to a Bills touchdown that gave them the lead, but the Bucs answered right back with a touchdown of their own to get the lead back. The Bills then punched back with an 8-play, 81-yard drive to go up 37-32. It was that ensuing possession where the Bucs had an opportunity to do what they had done most of the game and march down the field and come away with points, that they gained just 8 yards and immediately give the ball back to the Bills, who were able to march 85 yards for the game-sealing touchdown. And yes, you can absolutely blame the defense there. They gave up plays of 11 yards, 23 yards, a key third down stop that would have forced Buffalo to, end their drive, essentially. But then you have a face mask on Parrish to give Buffalo new life. They finished that drive with a touchdown. That drive that killed nearly 5 minutes of clock was the final nail in the coffin. And believe me, the defense was not short of failures in this game, but knowing that they were the side that was struggling to get off the field, the offense having just their second 3 and out of the game. I'll talk about the first one, later on in the show, but you go 3 and out in that situation, and you put a tired, struggling defense right back on the field. It was a recipe for disaster. We've talked about complementary football. We've talked about how when the offense was down, the defense was able to pick them up. The defense was down. They were down a lot, and the offense failed to pick them up in that moment. I'm not saying that, it's on the offense that they lost this game. What I'm saying is the biggest moment of the game, the biggest swing, kind of the ceiling moment, was at the feet of the offense. The Bucs did almost everything that they needed to do in order to get the win. They dominated on the ground. They won the turnover battle. They won the time of possession. The two biggest issues that led to their loss were inopportune mistakes and field position. And look, Baker was not great in this game. It was nice to see him running again. That was a nice little change. He scampers into the end zone, scampers for a couple of first downs. That's the Baker that we've needed to see. But you had Sean Tucker, who was absolutely outstanding. The offensive line was really good, but Baker still isn't doing a good enough job throwing the ball. Yes, of course, wind was a factor. We talked about that on the Friday preview episode. But Josh Allen threw for 317 and 3. Baker, on the other hand, was 16 for 28 for under 175 yards with 1 touchdown, and that touchdown came on a 28-yard catch and run by Sean Tucker. Abuka dropped a couple of easy ones. Otten dropped one. There were lots of throws that were low or off the mark. That second possession after Parrish's interception, Baker had Abuka open in the back of the end zone and didn't throw a good enough ball. Abuka tried to make a play. He got one hand on it, but it was a bad throw. That interception that he threw, that was an absolutely awful throw. I don't know if he was looking for Shep and just airmailed it, or if he was looking for Ibuka and woefully underthrew it. But either way, it was unbelievably awful. But I say all of that to say this. I am not pinning this game on the offense. I am not pinning this game on Baker Mayfield. You score over 30, you should win. Period. Point blank. That's the first time since the Baltimore game that the Bucs offense put up over 30 and lost. That was over a calendar year ago. The defense didn't hold up their end of the bargain. They started off like a house on fire, 2 interceptions in the first half, forced a 3 and out to open the second half, but no stops from that point on. The Bills scored on 4 straight possessions up until their final possession of the game when they were just trying to end the whole thing. More explosive plays were given up. This was the first time that the Bucs had given up 44 points or more since week 4 in 2018, when the Chicago Bears put up 48. There's no excuse for it. In their 3 losses over the last 4 games, they've lost by 15, 5, and 12. They are minus 38 in point differential in their 4 losses. They're plus 40 in their 6 wins. It's like these two sides of the ball just are absolutely allergic to playing well at the same time. This was the first time since week 6 that the offense put up 30 or more, and it was completely wasted on an abysmal defensive performance. And again, I was able to see, you guys know, my son had his hockey showcase over the weekend. I was able to see the beginning of the game. I was able to see, the Bucs get the opening possession. They have to punt it away. Then Josh Allen immediately throws an interception inside of their own 10-yard line. And I'm like, okay, here we go. Stuffed on a run, bad throw to Ibuka. They settle for 3. You can't waste those opportunities, just like the defense can't waste a hat trick by Sean Tucker. You have to be able, against good teams in the NFL, you cannot allow those mistakes to happen. You cannot allow explosive touchdowns to happen because you're going to lose. And I'm going to get more into the defense a little bit. You're coming up in a little bit. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into that. So I don't want you all to hear what I'm not saying. Again, this is not on the offense. I have my issues with Baker's overall performance. I'll talk more about that, but I still think that those injuries are playing a factor. He's still not where we're used to seeing him in terms of throwing the ball. Taking off and running, that's a step in the right direction. The offensive line throughout the game, that's a step in the right direction. Sean Tucker, great job. The defense has to own this loss. But there were plenty of missed opportunities on the offensive side as well. That's kind of the overall point that I was trying to make by saying that the biggest moment was that 3 and out, because the offense was clicking. The offense looked good throughout this game. And to have that one failure that has cost them multiple games, over the last month, to have it happen in that moment was crucial. It was critical and it was costly. Going to jump into the chat real quick. Lakita, the fact that we couldn't put it in the end zone at the beginning of the game on the 6-yard line was utterly demoralizing. I don't know if I would go so far as to say it was demoralizing. It was frustrating. I think if it was demoralizing, the Bucs would have come back out and they would have been flat on offense like we saw last week against the Patriots, right? They march down the field, they get an opening drive touchdown, then they completely fall flat, and they're flat for a long stretch. It was nice to see them bounce back and get some scores. Thank you, Sean Tucker. Thank you, Baker Mayfield's legs. So I wouldn't go so far as to say that was demoralizing. I think there was more demoralizing moments than just that, but it was certainly frustrated, and it was a wasted opportunity that they desperately needed at the end of the game. If you get a touchdown there, you're not going for 2 twice and missing both times. And you're not trailing by 2 scores at the end of the game. If the rest of the game plays out the way that the way that it did, but you have a touchdown on that, after that Jacob Parrish interception, you might have a very different outcome because it's not as insurmountable at the end. That's really what it comes down to. Coach RJ, this was not on Baker. I agree 100%. This was not on Baker, but I can still criticize, some poor play on his part. Yeah, this one was on the defense. They need to own that. They need to make up for it next week because that is going to be a big game against the Los Angeles Rams. All right, I'm going to talk about my biggest takeaways and dive a little bit deeper into the problem with this defense. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You're still overpaying for wireless. It's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. I said yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for just $15 a month. Mint makes it simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your own phone and keep your same number and contacts. The setup is super easy. You keep your number, and then you're running in minutes. Are you ready to say yes to saying no? Make the switch at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 a month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. My biggest takeaway from this one on the offensive side, let's start with some happy. Okay, it's a tough loss. It was a tough pill to swallow. Let's talk about some of the positives, though. There is hope with this offensive line. A much better game from them than what we saw last week. And they did it with Dan Feeney and Mike Jordan at the guard positions. So you still don't have Ben Bredesen. You still don't have Luke Haggard, but the arrow is pointing up. Truly, once those two guys are back in the fold, I think you're going to see Baker start to get more back to normal. Whatever limitations he's facing with these injuries, he's still going to be facing. But I think in terms of his timing, his psyche, his ability to read and react and everything, it'll be the best protection that he's had all season when all of those pieces are together. That internal clock for Baker is going to start to slow down. He's not going to feel that pressure close in as quickly. He's not going to get those happy feet or force passes earlier than he wants to because he feels that pressure closing in because he doesn't trust the interior that is in front of him. I still think that he's fighting through the injuries. I think it is affecting his ability to be as accurate as we have seen him since joining the Buccaneers, but the protection plays a very, very big role in all of that. So need Bredesen to be fully healthy. Don't want him, re-aggravating that hamstring injury. But once that piece is back, once you get Luke Haggard, who I think everybody probably trusts a little bit more than Feeney or Jordan, that is going to really play into what the Bucs can do offensively. Just like we are that much closer to Bucky returning, that is also going to give the offense a boost. But we talked about it all week, and it's kind of my offensive takeaway part 2. Sean Tucker deserves more carries. Like, I don't want to see his role disappear once Bucky returns. We're all excited for Bucky. Everybody wants to see him back out on the field. We all want to see that explosiveness. But I don't think that Rashad has been bad by any means. It's just that Tucker has been better. And he proved that in this game. 19 carries, 106 yards with 2 touchdowns plus 2 receptions for 34 and another touchdown. I mean, Rashad in his own right, he was 10 for 51. He had 2 receptions for 11 yards. He was good. Both running backs averaged over 5 yards a carry. And that's what you needed in this game. But there's no question in my mind, in your mind, and in pretty much anybody's mind who has watched this team over the course of the last 2 months, that Sean Tucker has earned more opportunities. So when Bucky returns, obviously he's the RB1. That's the guy that you have out there most of the time. But I don't want to see Tucker relegated to just special teams and it be back to the Bucky and Rashad show. Sean Tucker has to have, opportunities and be part of this mix. And I don't know if that's easing Bucky back in by not giving him a massive workload, or if it's going to take away from Rashad. But you have to allow Sean Tucker to go out there and continue to make the kinds of plays that he's making. Because as we saw against the Bills, he is an explosive waiting to happen at any moment. He doesn't have the speed, the agility, the quickness, or the elusiveness of Bucky. What he does have is that power speed combination. And that's what led to him having the game that he did. All right, defensively, it was an absolute disaster. There was no pressure on Josh Allen all game long. 0 sacks. I predicted 4 in my bold. 0. More than that, though, I think that Todd Bowles needs to make a very serious change. I've talked about this numerous times throughout the season when talking about Reddick and Nelson and Yaya. And it's something that Bowles has been doing that has been working out earlier in the year. It's not working anymore. Teams are now using this against them. And I'm talking about edge rushers dropping into coverage. It's got to stop. It absolutely has to stop. More huge, explosive plays came as a result of this exact philosophy for the second week in a row, and it cost the Bucs in a big way. Yaya Diaby was the one in coverage against Tyrell Shavers on his huge touchdown catch in the first half. It was Anthony Nelson in coverage against James Cook on some of his big receptions out of the backfield. You've got to stop doing this. It doesn't matter if it opens things up for guys like Tyke and Parrish and Dean and Servassier, to blitz when it's costing you explosive plays and long touchdowns. The juice is not worth the squeeze anymore, because this is 2 weeks in a row now that the Bucs have given up 50-plus yard scores. And for as good as this defense has been through most of the season, you can't keep taking your key pass rushers away from the pass rush. It's not working anymore. There's enough film on it now that teams are saying, okay, go ahead and drop Nelson. Go ahead and drop Yaya. Drop Reddick. Watch us do this, because we're going to expose this. We know where the blitz is coming from. We know when the edge is dropping, and we're going to dump it right over your heads, and then a catch and run's going to gain 40 yards. And Todd Bowles is insanely smart. He has to see that at this stage of the season, it's creating more problems than it is opportunities. So I don't know why he's continuing to do it. Diaby had been on an absolute heater getting after the quarterback coming into this game. Nelson was just Defensive Player of the Week a couple of weeks ago because of his pass rush. So why are you taking them out of that spot and creating mismatches that benefit the opposing team? And look, for tomorrow's episode, I'm going to try to dig into some numbers on this, as far as overall performance. But I cannot imagine that the Bucs defense is performing well in these situations anymore. Nor can I imagine that the edge guys are grading out well in pass coverage, because there's no way that they can be. Let your pass rushers be your pass rushers. That's what you're paying them to do. That's why they're on the team. That's the role that they need to play. And if you're relying on them to drop in coverage next week against Kyren Williams, or you're matching up Yaya Diaby with Devontae Adams, or you're dropping Anthony Nelson to go up against Puka Nacua, you're asking for the same thing to happen. And this is now a must-win game against Los Angeles. On a lighter note, Tyke Smith has been absolutely phenomenal throughout this season. He's continued to make huge plays. He made a couple of really big ones against the Bills. Little scary moment that when he went down on Servassier Dennis's interception, when he deflected the ball in the air. He was evaluated for concussion, came back. He's good. The Bucs need him to have a huge week next week. The other disappointing note is that it really sucked that Jamel Dean got hurt so early in this game. I did think on my first watch, and bear with me, I had to go through this game quickly. By the time I got home, the game had already ended. I wanted to make sure that I got this live show up quickly. I thought Morrison on the first viewing was much better than he was last week. I had one of the insiders text me and say he's getting burnt consistently. I didn't see that in this game. I'll go back and I'll watch the all 22, But overall, I thought he played much better, and that's a good thing. You need that because if Dean is out next week with that hip injury, Morrison is going to have a huge test against these Rams receivers. So it was nice that he had a solid game after being attacked by Drake May last week. I see people in the chat talking about Kyle Trask. I'm not gonna bring that up. Chip Kelly in the chat says Bowles is a joke. No, he's not. He absolutely is not. I think he was continuing to do something that worked early. It's not working now. It needs to change. You know, just like with Grizz last week when we were talking about the offense, it's not solely on the coaches. Could Bowles have put this defense in better situations and set them more up for success in certain instances? Sure. But it's also on the players to execute. It's on the guys that are rushing the passer to actually bring down Josh Allen. He broke a lot of tackles. It's on, the defenders to not let Josh Allen run and then drag a pile 6 yards into the end zone for his third rushing touchdown. It's on the players to go out there and score a touchdown when their defense gets them an interception inside the 10-yard line. It's not all on coaching. It's also on execution, and we've been over that numerous times. So, no, I'm not going to say that Todd Bowles is a joke. I think he made strategic mistakes in this game, and I think that's something that he's smart enough to address and change because it's not a thing that he always does. It's something that he's done a lot this year because it's worked. It's not something that he has historically done a lot of. So, yeah, I'm again, it's more on execution than it is on coaching. I'm not going to sit on here and say that Todd Bowles needs to be fired because that's just not the case. All right, an airing of the grievances. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is the one making that late push. The defending champion Oklahoma City Thunder are the favorites to win the NBA Finals at plus 200, followed by the Cleveland Cavaliers at plus 650, the Denver Nuggets at plus 700, and then the New York Knicks at plus 1,200. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Wrapping things up here on a live post-game reaction episode of Locked On Bucs. So I do have an airing of some grievances here. And for the first one is one of the topics that I mentioned at the top of the show. And one of the things that I talked about in my preview as a key part of trying to win this game. I talked about you got to win the turnover battle. They did that. You got to be able to run the ball. They did that really, really, really well. You got to win the field position battle. They didn't do that. The kickoff coverage crapped the bed again and continuously gave the Bills a short field to work with. I can't. This is one of the things that's so frustrating about this team. I can't understand why when the offense plays well, the defense doesn't. When the defense plays well, the offense doesn't. And in the case of this game, when both are playing well for a certain amount of time, I'll talk more about that in a bit. That was the first half. The offense was playing well. The defense was playing well. The special teams bites them in the butt. You had kick returns in this game of 61, 29, 44, 41, 44 again, and then 15. Completely inexcusable. You guys remember earlier in the year when we would have like a different special teams failure every single week? It was blocked kicks. It was blocked punts. It was bad coverage. Well, the bad coverage is back. Riley Dixon was outstanding. He landed some punts perfectly to pin the Bills deep in their own territory. Then the defense didn't do a great job of taking advantage, except on that opening Bills possession when Josh Allen threw an interception out of his own end zone and then the Bucs couldn't capitalize. But it's just setting your defense up for failure when you allow those kinds of returns. It takes away all the momentum that you built getting down there, scoring a touchdown, saying, okay, defense, we got you. Now go out there and get the ball back. Oh, well, now the Bills are starting from the 50-yard line. If it doesn't get fixed, the Bucs will have a new special teams coordinator next year. Period. There have been more than enough special teams miscues and mistakes that his job is on the line, and they will find a new coordinator that can actually figure out how to cover or how to send your coverage on kickoffs to prevent those kinds of returns. Now, the other grievance that I have, maybe I'm just in a bad mood from watching terrible officiating all weekend at these hockey games that led to a lot of these games getting out of control and kids legitimately getting hurt when the officials were not doing their job. So here's my problem. Why don't the Bucs ever get the benefit of replay assist? I mean, is my memory shot? You guys tell me in the chat. Is my memory just gone? Have the Bucs gotten any of those replay assist calls this year? You had replay assist overrule an incomplete pass on third down to Curtis Samuel that gave Buffalo a first down. And it was the right call. I'm not saying it was a bad call. That was great concentration by Samuel, incredible body control to get his heel down. But in that moment, as I'm going through, it reminded me of the Cade Otton virtual measurement earlier in the game. The virtual measurement, as they explained it, is from where the ref spots the ball. But the spot was bad. There were multiple camera angles. J.J. Watt talked about it that showed Otton was a heck of a lot closer, potentially even stretched the ball out enough to move the chains. But the ref gave it a terrible spot because he was not in a good position to figure out where he went down to begin with. He was 5 yards behind Otton, the guy that actually spotted it. But then the virtual measurement marked him 1.3 inches short of the line to gain. Again, based on the official's spot, which was short of where Otton went down. So you had Todd Bowles burn a timeout early in the game on a very clear and obvious incomplete pass, but then he didn't challenge that spot. And they even mentioned on the broadcast, he's waiting and trying to give replay assist time to help him out. Where was the replay assist on that one? No one wanted to chime in that the spot was bad. Like, that's within the purview of replay assist. But the Bucs never get those calls from New York, ever. They face them, but they never get called in to help them. And again, maybe I'm reading way too much into it, or I have a personal vendetta against any official or any person wearing vertical stripes this weekend because of the endless levels of ineptitude that led to kids getting hurt, including my own. So I'm going to aim for anyone wearing vertical stripes in this moment. It just seems glaringly lopsided. This was a game at the end of the day that meant more to Buffalo than it did to Tampa. It didn't quiet the critics that the Bucs cannot beat good teams. It has now put their backs against the wall, which maybe they need. Maybe the Bucs needed this. But it put them in a bad spot heading back out on the road to face the Rams. You've got to get this crap cleaned up. You've got to clean up this defense. You've got to clean up this edge rushers in coverage problem. You've got to clean up the special teams. You need to get this defense back to where it was a few weeks ago. You need to get it back to where it was last week overall, minus those 3 explosive plays that the Patriots had. We know how good the defense can be because we have very clear and obvious footage of it. But the Panthers winning in overtime against the Falcons means that they're only a half game back of the Bucs in the division now. The Bucs have to travel to Los Angeles to take on the Rams, who just beat Seattle to be in first place in the NFC West. The Bucs are 2-0 against the NFC West this year. They are 2-0 against playoff teams that are coming out of the NFC West this year. The Panthers have to go to San Francisco on Monday night next week. But you don't want to rely on the 49ers to help you here. You have to help yourself. And we talked about it last week. You help yourself by doing the little things. The defense, they didn't do the little things or the big things. The special teams, they're not doing the little things. Baker still coming up short on some of these passes, still off target. He was great of moving around again this week. And again, it's a step in the right direction. We need Baker to get back to that 65, 70, 75% completion percentage because he is missing guys. Drops didn't help him today. It's not solely on him, either. But even the people that disagree with me right now, that Baker is not where we know Baker can be. You got to get it figured out. We knew that the Rams game was the one you had to have in this 3-game stretch, but that does not make the game any easier. That is going to do it for this episode. Sorry, guys. I have run out of time here. I appreciate all of you in the chat, though. I love you guys to death. Please check out everything going on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @Yarcho_Bucs, Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Bucs, at both of those places. If you want more talk about the Bucs Squad Show is coming up at 8 o'clock. For those of you in the live chat here, as soon as this is over, jump over to the Squad Show. They are going to have you covered over there. Lots of Q&A sessions on that show. Please make sure you check out the Squad Show. Support Jaron and Marcus. And then Ryan is going to be on that Squad Show as well. You're going to want to check him out. So please jump over there. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube with the notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. You want to support the show, but you don't want to be an insider. It's real simple. Like this episode on YouTube. Leave a 5-star review wherever you get podcasts. It does help other Buccaneers fans find the show. We will be back tomorrow with much more about this game as I continue to break down what is going on the defense and bring you those numbers that I talked about. You're not going to want to miss that. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.